Now, when the installer was complete, there was actually an option to launch after the install, and I did that, and now I can see the initial splash screen for Visual Studio 2026. Now, the other thing I did here in order to just quickly get this on my taskbar is once this was open, I right-clicked and said pin to taskbar, so that way it always appears down here for me to quickly get back open when I need it. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say create new project at the upper right-hand corner here. So again, if I go back, I'm talking about right here at the upper right, click that. And there's all of these different project types. That's too much information to try to get to, so let's do some filters here at the top. First of all, we're working with C#. Then for the platform, we're going to go ahead and say Windows. And then over here on the last drop down, we're going to switch this to desktop. Now that filters the list down quite a bit. And we're going to be doing Windows Forms applications in these training video series just because they're a little bit easier to get started with than WPF or Windows Presentation Foundation type applications. WPF is the more modern technology, and so if you're going to school and you're a more modern developer and you're doing desktop apps, you're probably using WPF, and you can absolutely use that. I'm going to be using WinForms because I'm old, and it's again much easier to sort of get started in placing controls and things like that and building some basic UIs using WinForms. So that's what we're going to do. Now, there is an important selection here. The first one is you see this Windows Forms app, but that's targeting like probably .NET 5, which is formerly .NET Core, and it's kind of like this cross-platform version of .NET. Now, we don't want that. We actually need the old school Windows .NET framework here, and so we're going to choose this option here. So this is important to make sure that you select the correct one. Now, I'm going to go ahead and press Next, and here you can see that there is a target framework here for the .NET framework. And I actually want this version 4.8 because that's what Tekla Structures version 2025 is specifically looking for. If you're doing previous versions of Tekla, like for instance 22 or 2023, those are, I think, targeting 4.6.2. So again, if you just Google and say what version of the .NET framework is Tekla Structures 2025 on, you'll see that it reports out version 4.8. So then you can give a name for your application. So I'll just say Beam Creator. And then you can choose wherever you want to store that repository. And then I tend to place the solution and the project in the same directory so it doesn't make additional folders. But you can place this and browse this into your documents or wherever you want to store your code. And then I'll just go ahead and press the Create button, and it should create a brand new Windows Forms application using the .NET 4.8 framework. Now, I'm not going to go through the mechanics of Visual Studio too much here because, again, I've assumed that you already went through C# training and you learned a little bit about how Visual Studio is set up and works. But at the very basic level here, if we actually just go to the top of Visual Studio, there's this Start button. And if you actually press that, that will build the executable of this application, which is just a blank Windows form. And look at that, it actually fires it up and executes that form. And you'll see that here, it's just an application. And when you close it, now it is no longer executing or in debug mode there. Now, what I can do is I can click on the form, and this is a visual designer. And if I actually just go up here, I'm going to go to View, and then let's just make Properties window available here. So again, View and then Properties at the bottom. So that way we can see the properties of the form over here on the right-hand side of the solution. Now, if I actually click on the form, you'll see that this says Form 1. Now, over in the Properties window on the right, if I scroll down here, I should be able to find the text property. And there's actually a button here to sort by alphabetical. So I'm going to change that to alphabetical sorting order here. And then there's that text property. So I can just say create, see if we call this Beam Creator. So I'll say Beam Creator, press enter, and then you'll see over here on the form at the top left, it says Beam Creator. So this is pretty much how Visual Studio works, and this is why I like WinForms apps, is that you have these widgets or controls and the form itself, and then you have these properties that you can change, and it just feels a bit more intuitive and simpler to kind of work with. Now you can drag and drop and resize basically everything here, but the next thing we need to do is we need to actually get some buttons or some controls on here. All right, so I'm going to go up to my View menu, and I'll go to Toolbox here, and that should give us a full selection of tools that we can actually add onto our form. So let's actually click on that if it keeps disappearing, and we're just going to click the pin so that way that always stays open there. And then if you go underneath all Windows Forms, you can see all of the different controls or buttons and things that you can put onto your form. And here, for instance, we just want a basic button. So I can either double click on that, or I can drag it by holding down my left mouse button and drag it onto the form. And then again, you can just drag and drop things, kind of like how you're in the Tekla Structures drawing editor. You just click on something, hold down your left mouse button and drag it where you need it. Now I'm going to put that here, and then when I have that selected, again, I can go to the properties window and there's this text field, and I'll just say create beam. And there we go. Now it looks like I need to resize it a little bit. So you can see that there's the grips, and I can resize that. Then I can click on the form and I can resize that a little bit here. And there we go. Looks pretty good. We have a very basic, simple dialog box. Now, the thing is that when we build this application right now, it's actually an external standalone application. And when we link the Tekla API to this, it's going to automatically hook this external application that is running separately from Tekla, and it's going to automatically call and connect into Tekla Structures. So this style of the API that I'm showing you here is actually not running as an internal process from within Tekla. It's a separate application that connects automatically with Tekla and exchanges data and information using the API. And this is extremely powerful. This is what makes Tekla awesome, in that you don't have to actually deploy internally the applications as an internal plugin or process. You can have your own fully robust standalone application that can just integrate and pass data with the Tekla API. And so that's one thing that's really fantastic here. So I just wanted to emphasize that so far we haven't even linked this up with the Tekla API at all. And again, if I just come up here to the start button, or if I go up to build and say build solution, that'll build the executable. And then there's debug and start debugging. That's the same as pressing this start button here. And so we'll press the start button, and now we'll see our executable and our form is resized. But when I press the create beam button, nothing happens because we haven't linked anything to that actual button. All right, so I'll close that down and we'll move on to the next steps.